Okay, today's the review day for the last review day, I guess I should say, for the cumulative test that has complex numbers on it. So let's start with this one. I to the 7th. That's definitely a complex number. It's got a whole bunch of i's in it. Well, I times I times I times I 7 times. But there's a smarter way to do it. Who remembers how you should divide that thing up? Yes, ma'am. Yes. Why are the I squareds particularly handy? Because I squared equals -1. Very good. And I can divide it up this way, and yeah, there's a faster way to do it. You could save a few keystrokes, so to speak, by just saying I squared to the third. But I kind of like this way. And -1, -1, -1. When you have 3 negative ones, does that mean it's negative or positive? Negative. Negative I. There was an I left over because we couldn't make it all into just I squareds. Some people want it to be -1 times I. That's the same thing. It'd be fine. All right, let's do another one like that. I to the third. Pause for a second. Let me give that a try. All right. I squared and an I. Why did I do that? Because it makes I to the third, but that makes -1. It's negative I again. Do they always come out to negative I? No. What if I had one more I on there? Well, then it would have been I to the fourth. And then what would I to the fourth have been? If I had one more I, it would have been I to the fourth, and that would have been I squared squared, which would have been -1 squared, which would have been +1. So your answers to these always come out to ones, or -1s, or I, or negative I. So if I say I to the 714th power, all I can tell you for sure is that it's a whole bunch of I squareds, and those are all negative ones. And is it an even number of I squareds? Yeah. Okay, and that means they're all going to cancel. I mean, as in there's no more negatives left. Get what I'm saying? It's -1 times -1 times -1, an even number of times, and therefore the answer's got to be a positive. And it's positive what? 1. How do I know there's no leftover I? Because this is an even number, and therefore I can divide it up into just I squareds. All right. How about 2I plus 3I to the third minus I to the fifth? Be very careful. There's negatives running all over the place here. And it's really easy to say, oh, I was close. I just messed up a negative. That's the whole point. Be careful and don't mess up the negatives. I'll pause for a second while you give that one a try. Okay, so this first one I can't really simplify. It's just 2I. The second one I can. 3 times I squared times I. Why did you do that, Mr. Server? You broke up a perfectly good I to the third. Because one of them then, this part, is known. I know that's -1. And then last, I have this one, minus I squared, I, or I to the 1. And those are -1s. Question? No, 2I is not the same thing as I squared. No? Well, if it's like 2 n's does not mean n squared. Just because they're i's doesn't mean that gives them special powers to be, that 2I would be the same as I squared. It is not the same. 2I means I plus I, but it does not mean I times I. Okay. All right, so I'm going to clean this up now. 2I is still just 2I plus, what's that? -3I. And what's this part? Careful with all those negatives. There's 3 negatives, so it's -I. Just 1. that I right there. And now these all have I in them. Awesome. What is 2I plus negative 3I? That's negative I. And then there's another minus I. What's negative I minus I? Negative 2I. That was the toughest one, and I would say it'll be the toughest one on the test. Yes?
So I to the fifth is...
Okay, hold on. I to the fifth. This minus in front of it made it negative. Maybe you missed that negative in front of it. All right. One more like that, because I got the feeling a lot of people had that one wrong. 2I squared plus I to the fifth minus I to the third. Pause for a second while you give that one a try. Okay. 2 times negative 1 plus I squared. Why did I break it up in I squareds? Because I know what I squareds are. They're negative 1s. And then negative I squared I. Now, every time you have an I squared, if I were you, until I was really good at this, I would write a negative 1 in parentheses. Because this is all going to be about not screwing up your negatives. The more you can show work, the less likely you are to make a dumb mistake. Because kids try to do this all in their heads, or even 2 of the steps, just a couple of steps at a time. And then poof, you did something wrong in your head and it's all wrong. All right, so I'm going to be really careful. Negative 2 plus, what's that? What's this? Positive 1, I, so I can just call it I. And then what's that? Positive 1, I, so that's just I again. And then I plus I is 2I. And then I'm going to say it's negative 2 plus 2I. Raise your hand if you had that one right. All right, I'm getting up to like 80% of the class, so I'm going to have to go on. If you're still having trouble with that, that's the kind of thing where tomorrow morning I am available. That's one of the nice things about pushing this test off another day, is that on Wednesday mornings during Mass, I'm available. So you can come in, but be specific on like, you know, Mr. Server, I was trying that review worksheet last night, and this one got me. Instead of just saying like, I don't get anything, that's hard to help with. But if you can narrow it down to something specific like this problem, help me. I can usually get through almost any number of questions if you have specific ones you want to help with. All right, what else is on this test? It's not just about complex numbers, but sometimes the complex numbers go along with a thing like discriminant. Do you get if I have a discriminant and it turns out to come out negative, but that means something is going to come out with an I in it? All right, so I'm going to give you an example of one of those. So imagine, if you will, you've got this equation. I'd like you to multiply this out and then find the discriminant. You can't find the discriminant until you have A, B, and C, and you won't have those until you get this all multiplied out. Once you have the discriminant, you will find out the discriminant's negative. Then you need to figure out what the roots are. And I'd use the quadratic formula because you'll have already done b squared minus 4ac, the hardest part of the quadratic formula. I'm only calling it quadratic formula so you get the idea that that gives you the roots, right? Okay. All right, I'm going to pause for a second while you multiply this thing out, get general form, figure out what b squared minus 4ac is, and then use the quadratic formula, and the questions would be this. What's a discriminant? How many solutions should there be then? And what are they? And you can't say, oh, they're imaginary, so I don't have to give them to you. No, because we have a whole chapter on imaginary things called complex numbers. Okay, pausing for a sec. Let me give this a try. All right, just to see if you're on the right track. I would show every step. Okay, why did I do all that work to find general form? Did you have the same general form as I did, or did I make a mistake in there? Okay, you guys get the same thing? All right, now if you didn't, I get there was a lot of steps in there, and you could have messed up in a lot of different places, so. All right, now assume for a moment you got this far. Then you'd have to do b squared, which is that squared, which would be 36, minus 4 times a times c. 4 times a is negative 1 times c is negative 17. Do I square root it? No. Don't square root it. Several people did that on the test. If you square root the discriminant, I can't give you the credit for it. It's just b squared minus 4ac. So this is 3 negatives in there, so it's 36 minus 4 times 17. I can do that in my head. 4 times the 10 is 40. 4 times the 7 is 28. 40 and 28 makes 68. And so this ends up being negative something, which I knew it was gonna. I set it up on purpose to come out with imaginary roots. Therefore, I'd have complex numbers, which is the whole title of the thing. So I think I got 32. Did you guys get 32? Okay, awesome. So the discriminant's negative 32. That means there's how many solutions? 0 real ones. But do you still have to find them? Yes, you do, because you've got a whole chapter on that. So you use the quadratic formula. And I've already done most of the work of the quadratic formula. I've got b squared minus 4ac right there. So x equals negative b, 6. Plus or minus square root of that. All over 2a, which is 2 times negative 1, which makes negative 2. Now, can you simplify those? That's some intense algebra. Do you get that at the end of the question, we have a problem that was a question at the start of the hour? It's like we've done all that work and we have got to a problem that would have been the starting place earlier in the chapter. So there's a lot of steps, a lot of chances to mess up. 6 plus and minus. I'm going to make it 3 square roots because I like that way. And this is negative 1. 8 times 4 makes 32. Is there anything better? Yes, there is. Who knows what it is? 16 and 2. And that's going to make a nice round 6 plus and minus 4i root 2 all over negative 2. Finish it from there. Sadly, there's some people whose algebra is so weak they can't even finish that. And that's the last out of like 16 steps. That's why I try early on in this class to help people see what algebra they need to know and help them practice it. And then if they're not like they're not willing, they only get 2 out of the top 20 and they don't want to improve, then when you're here, when there's like 16 steps of algebra, you see how that'd be a problem? Now, some of you guys are still here and your algebra is kind of weak. If that's you, this is why I want you to get it to be better, because there's so many algebra steps and we're just in higher algebra. You can imagine what happens in pre-calc. And then when you go to calculus, so bottom line, you got to get good at solving equations and all this algebraic manipulation stuff. All right, what's in both of those? 2. 2 comes out, we got left 3 plus minus 2i root 2 all over. Now, this is going to be kind of tricky, but I think you'll like it. I can factor out 2 on this one and leave behind the negative 1. 2 times negative 1. That is negative 2, isn't it? That way this 2 can just cancel. And then I had kids leave it this way, and it's so sad. All that work. If you leave divided by -1, I cannot give you full credit. Why? Because it can be simplified. If you divide by everything by -1, this will get divided by -1, so I'd have -3, plus and minus, and this will get divided by -1, but why do I not want to put another negative sign there? Is there any such thing as a plus minus minus sign? I've already got a plus sign, I've already got a minus sign, and if you throw in another sign, it's just there's no such thing. There is no such thing as that. So you might think it would change the answer, but it does not. You've already got to add it, and then you're going to subtract it. So do you get if you do a plus minus 2 and then a minus minus 2, you're just going to be doing plus and minus. That's just not there. It's a lot of really picky little rules. And being good at math teaches you to be really careful with all the little rules. Like if you are a lawyer someday, you'll get the difference. If you have one word off in a contract, it can cost your client millions of dollars because of this one word, literally. If they just have made something plural instead of singular, you could cost your client millions of dollars because everything gets followed exactly to the letter. Anything's off in the contract, somebody can get out of the contract. Or somebody can just say, sorry, I'm not going to pay you that because the contract says you had to provide, like staff members with an S, and you only sent us one person. And so you didn't send enough people to the job, so I don't have to pay you. See what I mean? Like there's law situations where one letter can screw up the whole thing. Same thing with math. You got to be really careful with the details, like dividing by a negative. This number would change to negative. That one would not, because plus minus has already got all the bases covered. Okay, so final answer, -3 plus and minus 2I root 2. Wow. You are in higher algebra, and honors higher algebra at that. All right, so what do you have to know for the test tomorrow? All of that plus all that stuff about the quadratics on the calculators. If you have any weaknesses there, if you're like, oh, I never got those to work right, well, come up, take a few minutes with me. I'll help you do it. And your job for tonight is go through that whole worksheet, because now we've had 2 nights on it, and just make sure you've done every problem. If you skipped some last night, totally made sense. Now you got to finish them. All right, so make sure you turn that in too, because I'm definitely going to be looking to collect that, because you've had 2 nights on one assignment. That's makes it more worthy than ever to collect it from you. So tomorrow when we start the test, I'll ask you to Dropbox it. Okay? All right, so you got a bunch of time to work. If you need help, come on up and ask.